Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
All right. Hi, Ethan.
Pete, we are back, and as promised, we have gone to Netflix. We have both watched Don't Look Up, which is an exclusive Netflix
That's right.
film, star-studded cast. Immensely so. I had no idea what this was about. To be honest, I remember the cartoon Up from I don't know, maybe 8 years ago. I had no idea what this was about, judging from the title. So to be honest, I didn't see any trailers. I didn't even hear about it. I think you mentioned it to me. We both watched it. Summarize it quickly. Tell us.
So Don't Look Up, let's call it like socio-political satire. And
yes, it is. It is satirical.
Yeah,
yes,
and it's about two scientists in Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence, who discover a meteor, and they find that the meteor is actually on a collision course with Earth, and they work at I guess one is a PhD student, one is a professor at
Michigan State,
University of Michigan,
or
Michigan State, something
like
that. I can't. Where I'm about to get absolutely roasted by the other school. One of those schools anyway. And so they report their findings to NASA, and that gets elevated all the way up to the White House, and where it's quickly and summarily dismissed because the president is in a fight for the midterms, and the president is played of course, by Meryl Streep. And it's dismissed. The threat is dismissed because, they're not from the Ivy League, and because it's 6 months out and they have more pressing things to worry about than a meteor. Most importantly, they've got to deal with the midterms. And then, of course, they politicize the issue so that they can win the elections, blah, blah, blah. And then they're about to Armageddon the meteor when all of a sudden the mission is called off at the last possible minute. And it's called off because this Apple-esque CEO has discovered that the meteor has like $100 trillion worth of minerals on it. And so their idea is instead, let's break up the meteor into 30, 50 smaller meteors.
Yeah.
And we can mine the meteors and we can make a lot of money out of this. And, instead of this being a collaborative, the world against the meteor thing, we'll make this the USA versus everybody else thing, and we'll keep all the mineral rights to ourselves. And of course, that mission fails, and then you'd think that, oh my God, something will happen in the last second, and it's truly a dark ending. I did not see this coming.
Spoiler alert.
Oh yeah, my God.
The world ends.
The world ends. The meteor collides and kills everybody except for a small space shuttle that goes away, that, has some cryogenic chambers and goes to land 30,000 years ahead in the future. It lands on another planet where humanity is promptly destroyed or eaten alive by these alien creatures that inhabit it.
So, let's get right to it. How do you grade this film?
Oh my God!
It's not so simple. It's not so simple.
It's not simple. Look, again, on paper, this is going to be like the best movie of the year, right? You've got J-Law, Meryl Streep, Leonardo DiCaprio, a bunch. There must be 50 Oscar nominations amongst Ariana Grande.
Ariana Grande, Michael Chiklis, Timothy Chalamet.
You've got
Ron
in
Perlman,
this cast, you've probably got 50
Jonah Hill, Kate Blanchett.
Oscar nominations and or wins amongst the crew. So you're just like, oh my God, this is like a shoo-in to be the best. And yet it turns out to be terrible.
Yeah.
To show you a peek behind the curtains, before the podcast started, I told Ethan, let's not disclose what we think of the movie to each other. Let's spoil it for each other on the show, on the actual podcast. And let me be the first to tell you, I thought this movie was terrible.
I mean, I agree with you, Pete, in the final grade. However, I don't think it's irredeemable. And I don't think it's unwatchable. Maybe that's... I think it's a very bad movie in the sense that it combines too much stuff, and it's not clear as to whether it's a sci-fi movie, whether it's supposed to be a political satire, whether it's actually supposed to be a little bit like Deep Impact or Armageddon. It's really not clear what message it's trying to send. And unfortunately, if it was faithful to any of those genres, it might be actually pretty good. I think if it would not have been so satirical, actually it would have been a pretty good movie, and we could have taken like a lot of messages about it. The messages are subtle. I mean, we're not so stupid of a people that you have to give us this satire to get the point across. I think if you would have made a straight movie, the point would have gotten across, and
like a proper drama.
Yeah, proper drama. The point would have gotten across, right? And the point I think was that there's a very corrupt political system. Okay, to the surprise of no one, that large corporations, and in this case, the fictitious company was called Bash. It could have been Apple, could have been Amazon, could have been
Microsoft. It could have been any one of those larger tech
Facebook,
companies,
or whatever they're called, Meta now.
Yeah.
That those organizations are so large and contribute so much to the political parties or landscape that purely humanitarian or political decisions are now becoming commercial decisions and so forth. There's a lot of truth to that as well. But I felt like, so let's say something positive. I thought everyone, actually the cast, apart from Meryl Streep, unfortunately, did a great job. I really think everyone played that really well. I think Meryl Streep as president and Jonah Hill as her son/chief of staff, I found that's where things went badly, actually. That everyone else wasn't really so satirical. I mean, it was a little bit more tongue-in-cheek and subtle. But Meryl Streep, who's, people have been calling her the GOAT and even called her the GOAT on set, who's such a strong presence, plays such a strong woman, is cast as a president and just came off as a doofus. Her son, chief of staff, Jonah Hill, who's such a good actor, came off as a doofus. And I think that those two characters were so satirical that it took away from the message, and they could have just been straight and the message would have gotten across. And the message is not a bad one, actually. I also think, well, tell me what you think about that first, before I go on more tangents.
So I think that in terms of political satire, like if you want to talk about this being a drama, like in terms of genre, I think this was really a political satire. The event that really, the meteor or the asteroid hitting Earth was really just an impetus to highlight the satire, or like the level of corruption. I think that it could have been anything. It didn't have to be a meteor. It could have been a tidal wave. It could have been a tsunami. It could have been anything. It was just a blank event that was meant to highlight how corrupt the system is, right? So in terms of satire, I get it. I understand your point and I agree with it. Maybe it was a little too on the nose, right?
It was too over the top.
Yeah, and in terms of political satire, like in the past, I think if you want to look at satire that was done a little bit better, I would say the seminal classic would be something like Dr. Strangelove. I don't know if you remember that one.
Oh, okay.
So, and if you want to talk about something a little bit more recent, something along the lines of Idiocracy.
I do. The problem with doing a satire, though, is that it's, a satire is good comedy, when you watch a stand-up comedian, or when you watch a short skit. But for a full feature movie, satire is very hard to carry over, because either the entire movie needs to be so satirical, in which case it just becomes, laughable and people tune it out. Or, I think the problem with this film is that there's just too much, and it doesn't really hit because it seemed so unbelievable. Meryl Streep didn't have to be so, it wasn't that she was even unlikable. She didn't need to be so incompetent. We already have a very...
Exactly. She seemed stupid is the thing.
We already have a very politicized environment, regardless of what country you live in and so forth.
Yeah.
We didn't need Meryl Streep, who's so well respected, to play this. I mean, she's sending, naked selfies to a Supreme Court nominee who doesn't even have a law degree. I mean, it was just so over the top that they could have made her silly. They could have made her out of touch with reality. They could have done a lot of other things. They didn't have to make her just so dumb and reckless.
Crap on every
and the same thing with Jonah
Yeah.
Hill. I mean, okay, Jonah Hill could have played a very incompetent, out of touch, dispassionate, chief of staff. But I mean, they didn't need to make him say a prayer where he said a prayer for things, dope stuff. I mean, like, it was just so over the top. I felt like you could have gotten the point across having a staffer who, isn't worried about polling or the timing of this or who leads it or so forth. I also thought that they really minimized NASA. And I thought that was kind of unnecessary. I mean, they had a very, very good Dr. Teddy Oglethorpe, right? Played by Rob Morgan. Super, super good when we're first introduced to him. He's on top of things. He seems to have a very, very good understanding of, astrophysics and mathematics and things like this. But then kind of that character also devolves into a little bit of a silly guy who's
a little bit on the jokey side.
Yeah, and I think that really minimized it. I don't think it was necessary. So I just kind of felt like it was supposed to be satirical. It was supposed to get the point across, but I felt like you could have made a straight up drama movie that would have been very good, and it would have got the same point across without kind of being so silly and goofy and turning people off. Because I think it's hard to get a message across when you make it comedy. You say, ha ha ha, well, that's just comedy. That's just so nonsensical.
Yeah. When I heard about this film and then I heard that Adam McKay was directing, I thought it was going to be along the lines of The Big Short, which is to say a fictionalized... So Big Short was based on reality, right? And the story was based on something that actually happened. But it took real world events and did like a dark semi-comedy dramatization about it, right? So it was less satire. It was almost like a biopic in that sense, right? And I kind of thought, oh my God, he's going to do something along that lines where it's a fictional event. I think that would have been incredibly powerful. And I think
it would have been super powerful.
The difference is that would have pointed to not, again, and I hate getting political on this show, even though this does fall under the Films and Stuff banner. But like, I feel like when you see this film, you can't help but think that they're pointing fingers at the previous U.S. administration. Right? Yeah. And I'm not saying that that's how the U.S. administration, the Trump's administration was run or not run. I don't know. I'm not an expert by any means at all. But I can't help but feel like this seems like an overly dramatic attack by the left wing onto the right in a sad attempt at satirical humor. But because it was so over the top, it comes off as not genuine. It comes off as not funny in that sense.
A little bit petty.
And very petty. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it seems unnecessary, especially given the fact that with this cast, with this director, if they really wanted to make a modern day version of a political satire, they definitely could have. It would have been less slapstick comedy like they had in this one, and more comedy like what we saw in The Big Short, which is to say Big Short wasn't supposed to be a comedy, but there were definitely comedic elements to it, right? And I think if you were trying to make a point to the wider audience, that I think would have been much more, let's say, that would have, I think, resonated more overall, rather than I think this is going to have a very narrow appeal to a very certain political demographic.
There's 2 points in here that, from a film perspective, or maybe from a cultural perspective, I kind of feel like I wish they would have explored more. So when you gave the recap, one of the things that I wanted to dwell more on is that there was an asteroid or comet that was going to impact the Earth. Again, we've seen this story before: Deep Impact,
Sure.
Armageddon, right? NASA or the UN or whatever agencies cobbled together, this mission, and they're going to essentially drill into it. I mean, again, it's Armageddon. They're going to drill into it, put explosives, and they're going to break it up into a lot of bigger pieces, and the bigger pieces aren't going to be a problem. So that we've seen before. It's not new. It's probably what what the contingency plan is if such a situation actually does exist. But I thought that there was something interesting, just from a strictly commercial or business perspective, that really was kind of diminished, which is, it's true that in the world there is a lack of rare earths and other minerals. And to the extent that we have a free source of these additional materials, put aside all the other things, the phrase, all things being equal, all things
Sure.
being equal, why wouldn't you find a way to say, hey, wait a second, why should we just, explode these things and push them off course? What if we could actually break them into smaller pieces? They would fall harmlessly into the Pacific Ocean, and, then we could mine them. And the guy said something, which of course it doesn't make sense, but he's like, hey, we could solve poverty. We would have enough resources and enough money from this that we could do all these great things. And to be honest, that message is maybe it's overly optimistic. Maybe it's not possible.
I was about to say it's a little utopian,
it's
because we both
true.
know that it would
Of
never
course,
happen.
but the idea of saying, hey, here's something bad, and as humans, that's kind of what distinguishes us, is we can take something that's a challenge or a threat, and we can find a way to engineer it into an opportunity or something good. I agree. That gets off course because I don't think that's possible scientifically or commercially. But the idea is actually not bad. If they're saying, hey, there's a better way to do this, that would be great. So I felt like that idea was a little bit unfairly diminished, because I think that's one of the hallmarks of humans. And it's one of the reasons that we've created so many wonderful things throughout history, is that we see something not as a threat or only something negative, but we find a way to turn it into a positive. And I don't want us to lose, that kind of spirit worldwide. I don't think it transfers exactly to the scenario, but I felt like that was just a little bit diminished and undermined in the film, and that didn't sit well with me, actually.
To be very fair or frank, I think that's just, that's maybe a little bit of our personal or your personal.
Is that my business side coming across?
Actually, I don't think it's your business side. I think it's your I think that's your good human side coming out.
Yeah.
Because and maybe it's just I'm too cynical, but just for me there was a scene where they said the US has cut off all relations with Russia, India, China, and I was like, oh, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
That 100% makes sense, because this is now the US, and again, I'm not saying the US overall, I'm just talking this specifically in this movie, that, they're going to go on their own. They're going to go lone cowboy on this, because they want to get a majority of it for themselves, right?
Yeah.
And that's not a US specific issue. I feel like if China could do it, they would do the same thing. If Russia could do it, they would do the same thing. It just so it happens that at least in this scenario, the US had the financial and the space resources to do it, which is why they did it.
Yeah, I hear you on that. The second thing that didn't really sit right with me was the idea of the panic. Jennifer Lawrence and Leonardo kind of presented this like, hey, there's this comet coming, 6 months. Everyone should panic now because we're going to die. And they're not wrong about this, in the end. But I felt like that's also not the right message to send, in in that situation, I mean, what are people going to do? I mean, it's just going to be lawlessness for 6 months. I mean, I agree. You don't
The
have
purge
to,
for 6 months.
yeah, I mean,
basically.
you don't have to, lie and conceal it, which we saw in like Armageddon or something. But I mean, the fact is that it's not a bad idea to say, okay, look, there is a threat. We're doing our best. Like the way that you should actually handle this in real life is to reassure people and say, look, like we've got some options, we've got some contingencies, chill out. I remember I don't think it was Armageddon, I think it was Deep Impact. The president was, I can't remember. Help me out, who was the president? In any case, Morgan Freeman was the president. He said,
Morgan.
look, I'm instituting martial law. I'm putting price controls. Everything's going to cost the same tomorrow as it did today. No one's going to hoard, blah, blah, blah. We've seen this in the past 2 years with an unending COVID crisis. That panic is not really good. And to be honest, I didn't like the message where our two main characters wanted everyone to panic and do what? About a situation people had no control over.
So this is what I'm saying. This is where things start to get a little muddled for me in terms of political ideology, perhaps of the writers or of the director or whoever is involved in the filmmaking, because my feeling was that this exactly paralleled the real world scenario that we saw in the UK, in the US, with the beginning or the middle parts of COVID, the current COVID pandemic, right? I can't say the last COVID pandemic because we don't know when it's going to last. But I think the reality is that it was, the government downplayed everything, whereas the scientists were the ones saying you can't downplay this, right? And I think that was the message that they were trying to say, which I think I agree with you comes off as a mess because as a scientist, yes, I agree that you have a mission. Your job is to tell the truth, but also as a human being, you also have to, you have a responsibility to also understand the implications of your actions, right? There are consequences to your actions, right? And you have to see all of that. Right. And that's okay. I guess that's where the government and politics in general will supersede scientific, let's say, notions of science and whether access to the truth should be made available or not. Right. Where I think this movie got elements of its satire exactly right was towards the end of it. It's called Don't Look Up because the government, right, issues an edict, or not an edict, but like a proclamation where you have two camps of people, right? You have a camp of people effectively who believe in the science and who believe in the data, who see that there's an asteroid coming, and to the point where eventually the asteroid is visible to the naked eye, right? And so they're just like, well, if you don't believe us, you don't have to believe your own eyes. Look up in the sky and you can see it yourself. You don't need a telescope. And whereas the government adopts this mantra of saying, don't look up, right? I mean, which I thought it's such a stupid thing, but that the fact that they got such buy-in from everyone, right? And that was for me, the closest political satire got to reality in a not good or bad way, just in a good satire way, was to ridicule the whole situation. It's like, okay, we get it. You don't believe in this pandemic? Fine. So don't wear a mask. Don't do whatever. And in this case, they're saying, why do you have to believe in this asteroid? You can't see it with your own eyes. And you know what? Don't look for it. It's not there. If you can't see it, the problem's not there, It's the same thing I used to do when I was playing hide and seek as a kid, right? You always closed your eyes and said, if I can't see them, they can't see me, right? That kind of reality that the second camp has. So I think that was for me probably the only relatively funny and accurate in terms of what we see, but not accurate, not in terms of trying to send a specific message one way or another. I just thought that in terms of the tone, I thought that was done well.
I think for me to summarize how I felt about the movie, I thought it was watchable. The entire political element and the over-the-top satire turned me off. And I think this is going to be a very polarizing movie, to be honest. But more than that, just as a film and entertainment fan, I'm really disappointed by this movie and more by what Netflix is doing. Because, I mean, there is a need for content. And we've seen this. We've seen everything, Pete, on Amazon Prime. We've seen it on Paramount.
Yeah.
We've seen Apple TV Plus. We've seen Hulu. We've seen, Netflix. And the Netflix strategy, actually in stark contrast to what we just talked about in one of the prior episodes about
Wheel of Time with Amazon.
Yeah, about the Wheel of Time in Amazon Prime, is that this is just the same problem we had with Netflix and Red Notice. They threw a lot of money at very big names, but the output is not really so great.
Yeah.
And this movie, unlike Red Notice, where you said, look, it's three main actors, there's going to be a sequel, maybe this is going to be kind of the flagship franchise of Netflix. And we said, okay, we can see that. We like all three actors. It wasn't a great effort, but, we can see it kind of going somewhere. This has no potential for a sequel, for a franchise, for a series. And to be honest, I'm really disappointed that they put so many big names in here for such a meh effort, where I'd rather see, this could have been, with this amount of cast, this could have been 4 movies. Yeah. Ariana Grande and Kid Cudi. Honestly, put their own spin-off. That would have been an amazing spin-off.
I mean, right? I don't know if I agree with that sentiment, but I understand your point.
This is enough cast for 2, 3
easily. Meryl Streep can carry her own movie.
Yes, Leonardo can carry, Lawrence can carry, Kate Blanchett can carry, Jonah Hill can carry. I mean, this is 3, 4 movies, and I just feel like they lit all their fireworks at once, and it came up with a very uninspired,
and hoped for a beautiful.
And it's just very uninspired.
I think this is a problem for Netflix as of late, and I say, by the way, I think a reasonable caveat that we should say here is that we don't know performance metrics. We can only talk about critical response and our personal opinions on the movies, because Netflix, it's hard to decide how you determine what's a success for Netflix as people who don't know what the numbers are. We don't know how many hours of people watched it. We don't know how many accounts watched it. We don't know anything.
But Pete, you say that, but let's break this down a little bit, if you don't mind. Netflix is a subscription service. So the fact that a lot of people watch any specific show doesn't necessarily mean that show is generating a positive return on its investment. It just means that maybe there's no other alternatives, or it's just pushed incessantly. But I would expect if they had something like Wheel of Time and you saw people joining Netflix to watch that, I would think that's different. But I feel like no one's joining Netflix to watch this.
Yeah, no, I agree. So my point is that I'm not even talking about subscription numbers. I'm just talking about, if you release this movie in the cinema, it's very clear to see what the metrics would be, right? You can see your box office take. You can see how many tickets were sold in whatever markets. You could even identify those markets that it did well in and didn't do well in. And I'm not saying Netflix can't do that. Netflix could easily do that, because they can, I'm sure behind the scenes, they know exactly who is watching, what accounts are watching, what accounts are likely to be watching if they're watching this, etc. They have all these things, but that's all private knowledge, right? So you and I, as average Netflix users or above average users, wouldn't be able to gain access to that data, right?
Above average.
I think what Netflix does and what they've been doing is, because of what you just rightly said, is that, hey, we need people to sign up for our service, right? Because it's a subscription service, and we need people to stay on the service, right? So what we're going to do is let's throw $100 million at Adam Sandler, and let's tell him your next 4 movies are Netflix exclusives. Let's throw $200 million at Meryl Streep, Leonardo DiCaprio, Adam McKay, etc. Let's tell them your next 2 movies are Netflix exclusive. Let's just do that. So we don't know if the movies are going to be good or bad. We don't. And at this point, I don't think Netflix even cares, because right now, I think what it is, it's for Netflix, their model is very much a volume-based game. How do we generate the most amount of content? And let's hope that out of the content we produce, we have a success rate of, 10%, 50%, 60%, whatever the number is. Yeah. And whereas I think whereas, platforms like Apple is saying, hey, you know what? We're a tech company first. We're known for iPhones. We're known for Macs. We're not known for media. We're not known for content. I would rather give $100 million to Tom Hanks to make 4 really small Tom Hanks movies than to give $100 million to make 4 to Adam Sandler, because I want to have a niche service, a service that's all about great content, right? Because, if you think of Apple is a technology company, but they're also known for very high design, beautiful products, right? And I think they want that element of good quality or high quality, whatever it is, to permeate into their content as well. And so they are being very particular about their products and the shows that they launch. I mean, if you go on Apple TV and compare it to Netflix, the number of shows they have compared to Netflix, I mean, it's nothing, right? It's a drop in Netflix bucket. And more importantly, Netflix has tons of content in like hundreds of different regions. They have region specific content as well. Apple doesn't have that. Apple's nowhere near that.
Well, Pete, actually, I think that's a little bit of an interesting point. Maybe it makes me rethink my perspective, but I only rethink it then because of this point. And I'd love for someone from Netflix to volunteer to be on the show as a guest. We would definitely have some good questions. But maybe I hear your point. What Netflix is trying to do is they're not just trying to win the publicity game, which is, hey, we've got all these big name, actors and actresses. But maybe if you're talking about the data and the metrics, if you just shove everybody in one movie, when you, my mom, me, my sister's husband are all looking for a show, when you put this much cast in it, everyone's going to hit on it.
It's bound to be hit on your list.
And maybe they just said, look, it just like, there's like economies of scale. They say, hey, let's just make one movie that it won't appeal to anybody, but it hits on everybody, right? It's going to be on their hit list. And then we just have to produce one movie. It'll be mediocre. Rather than to do the same thing, we have to have 3 or 4 different movies, the production time, blah, 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 blah. And they say, it's just like making a burrito and you serve it for dinner and say, look, this will appeal to kind of everybody. We don't have to do 2 or 3 separate entrees. Let's just do this one. So maybe in that perspective, if that's how Netflix is looking at this, maybe it makes a lot of sense. But I think from an artistic perspective, and I think always at some point when you have this many platforms competing, and not everybody is like us, Pete. We pay for everything, right? I mean, we're on
between the two of us, I think every show on every platform is covered.
Not everybody does that, either because they don't have the time or they don't have the money, or it's just brand awareness. People are on 1 or 2 and they kind of choose them. So I think that over time, quality has to win out. And if you're a Netflix user and you just joined Netflix because you're so excited about this Leonardo DiCaprio film or The Rock in Red Notice and you watch these, if you're disappointed with the quality, you're going to say, look, cancel my subscription. I did the 1-month trial. It's not worth it. I'm out. Just like HBO, right? HBO, I joined HBO to watch not even the new Sex and the City, although that was a bonus, but Succession. If Succession would have been bad, I canceled it, right? I did my 1 month for free. I'm out. There's nothing else to keep me on there.
Yeah.
So I feel like quality, while there may be someone who's the account manager or who's the internal champion of this film, and they can point to a lot of good stuff, maybe they're going to have a huge bonus, and maybe there is justification for this being successful. Over time, I feel like the artistic quality is going to win out. And having seen, and you and I have reviewed both of these, Red Notice from Netflix and now Don't Look Up from Netflix. And if someone's saying, hey, should I subscribe to Netflix? We'd be like, well, not if you're only looking at these 2 movies, right?
Yeah. No, but to be fair,
let's be fair.
To be fair to Netflix, Netflix has access to content that may not be current now, but certainly when it was a hit, were massive hits, right? Squid Game,
I agree.
3 months ago, Orange is the New Black.
Yeah.
They've got a load of different shows and movies which are Netflix exclusive, and maybe not in your specific region, but there are definitely Netflix exclusives in different regions. So I think for Netflix, the 1 month trial is tough because they now have so much content that it's hard to see everything that you'd want to see in a 1 month trial period and then quit it. Yeah, because I think in terms of the number of hours of content they have, in terms of the various types of content they have, I'll be very frank. I joined Netflix because when I first joined Netflix, it was known for being what HBO was in the 80s, a place for stand-up specials.
Oh, you joined it for the comedy.
I actually watched it for all the stand-up specials because at that time, Kevin Hart wasn't touring in the UK or in the Middle East.
I do like Kevin Hart. I love Kevin Hart. Can we have an episode dedicated to Kevin Hart?
All these big name comedians, I couldn't physically see them where I was. So for me,
who else is a big name comedian that you follow?
Russell Peters, Kevin Hart, Jim Gaffigan, to a lesser extent now, Seinfeld. Oh my God, Chris Rock. You have oh my God, the super controversial guy. Oh my God, Dave Chappelle.
Chappelle.
All these guys have Netflix specials.
What about the Lady Cobra? What's her name?
Oh, Ali Wong.
Yes.
Unbelievable. What a great two specials that were both excellent. Both excellent. And I've discovered a lot of stand-ups because of Netflix, right? So that's, I think, how Netflix hooked me. And I now and I can't remember the last stand-up show I watched on Netflix because now I'm turned on to their movies or I'm turned on to their TV shows.
Well, I have to say, Pete, I did not know about that.
So
and thank you for sharing with me and our audience. I didn't know that you're such a stand-up fan, but I have to say, I love Kevin Hart. Anything Kevin Hart would be in, I would immediately watch it. Why is he not in anything recently? Or am I missing what he's been in recently?
I'm sure he's been in a couple. I mean, that guy's in like every movie and everything. He's all over the place at the moment.
How could he not be in Red Notice? If they would have added him
to Red Notice... You're absolutely right, by the way. If there was a movie that he could cameo in, it would have been Red Notice. It would have been Red Notice. My God. And you know what? They'll probably add him to Red Notice too.
Oh, I love it. Man, someone's going to take that idea. Let's remember, let's date stamp this because I feel like that's absolutely our idea.
I am certain what they're going to do is because he's got that off-screen and on-screen relationship with The Rock. So I'm sure he'll be like the antagonist or something like that who turns out to be their friend, or there'll be another twist like that. You know what I mean? Like it's inevitable that he'll be a part of this franchise.
Yeah, he is not only exceptional, I think, and funny, but every time I've heard him interviewed, he is one of the very, very few people that can be funny without being arrogant or vulgar at the same time. I find that to be such an endearing quality, that he can tell stories that are real, legitimate stories. Like sometimes you have like a comedian and they're kind of making up the story. It's like, okay, maybe that didn't happen, you're exaggerating, or maybe that happened to someone else. But I mean, the stories that he tells, I feel, are absolutely legitimate stories, and he tells them in a
very grounded in reality.
Yeah, in a very funny way.
Yeah. So Kevin Hart, I think, he is, from Philadelphia, rough beginnings, but I think, he's done very well for himself.
So what's the future of Netflix then? I mean, I think Don't Look Up has now kind of it's been released. It got a lot of big press. Of course, there's a huge love affair with Meryl Streep, and all the cast, spoke so highly.
The whole cast, really.
Yeah.
The whole cast, and I think
Yeah.
because it's a left-leaning movie,
Yeah.
I think Hollywood in general will see it very positively.
Yeah.
I think just looking at it as a movie, forget about the political leanings one way or another. Not a huge fan of it. I think it was too funny for satire, or trying to be too comedic for satire, in terms of the political satire.
I just felt it. I felt it minimized. I'm really frustrated. It minimized Dr. Oglethorpe.
Yeah.
I'm really frustrated that it minimized, the head of NASA. And to be honest, it also made some weird. I mean, Ron Perlman, who's such a good actor, came across as just kind of this like knuckle dragging racist, and I just felt like those I don't want to say they're cheap shots, but I feel I take it personally when people that I feel are very good actors are given this material to like drag them down. Like Meryl Streep I feel like she has enough clout that she should be saying, look, I can play an incompetent president, You don't always have to be the Devil Wears Prada, but you can play someone who's not a great character. But I don't feel like you should demean yourself, with this type of like flimsy softness that.
And I think that's you've hit the nail on the head, because and you raised the exact right movie, because why she was so excellent in The Devil Wears Prada was because she wasn't just a bad guy, but she was really excellent as being a bad guy. And in this case, you want her to be incompetent, you want her to be bad, you want her to be what?
Yeah.
What exactly do you want her to be? Because she's coming off as all of them and not good at that role in any of them.
Yeah, and I guess, I'm going to hit that thing again. You're right, because The Devil Wears Prada, not a nice person, came across as a bitch, very unlikable. But no one was saying like, the character was an idiot or didn't have self-control or was, just, like silly or goofy.
Unnecessarily cruel, none of that.
Yeah.
None of that.
So she could have
had a good purpose.
Absolutely. So as a president, if you want to do a satirical president, you could have done someone who is avoiding something or trying to, manipulate the situation or trying to position the timing to benefit her. All those things would have gotten the point across. But like the thing about what, nominating, this Texas cowboy who never had a law degree to the Supreme Court. Like, I felt like even that's not her acting. She didn't have any line. It just kind of diminished her. The fact that there was like something where, she obviously sent like a nude photo of herself, to the same guy. Again, she wasn't involved in that at all. But it diminished her character, and I felt like that just kind of diminished her role in that film.
And if you want to do that, which again, if that's what the movie calls for, no problem. But I think there are other actors out there who could have done a better job of playing the bumbling buffoon.
Yeah.
Again, this isn't a slight at all to the actors. I mean, if you're listening, Melissa McCarthy, this isn't a slight on you. I don't think you're a bumbling buffoon. But I think that you've played actors roles like that.
Yeah.
That I think she would have been better if that's the kind of role you want. Someone who's, somehow like failed her way up to the presidency. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And you know what? When you say that, it makes me think of Jonah Hill, because I felt like Jonah Hill for years was kind of the overweight, silly sidekick guy. And I felt like he spent so much time working to not just like improve his lifestyle and his level of fitness and health, but to be, taking roles.
Taken as a dramatic, serious actor,
Yes, and I felt with this thing, he reverted back to the same old Jonah Hill that everyone kind of...
douchey frat boy who somehow is in a position of power and is happy to send out those pot shots. Yes. You know what the thing is? You know why I like Jonah Hill?
Is he back in real life? Because I've seen some of the photos of the cast. And he was like, his look was also like a little bit more out there. He had like this suit on, no undershirt, and his like big chest tattoo was showing. He had the big beard and kind of like blonde hair. Is that his look for a different role, or is he now back to kind of this party boy?
I have no idea. But you know the reason I don't like Jonah Hill as of late is I think and this is 100% on me. It's not about Jonah Hill. I'm sure he's a lovely guy to work with.
And he
is so good at playing that jerky, douchey frat boy
Wolf of Wall Street.
that you love to hate.
Wolf of Wall Street.
That so good at that, where I was just like, every time I see him, I want to punch him in the face.
Oh, you wanted to,
doesn't matter what the role
punch him in Wolf of Wall Street?
No, but like in this movie, definitely.
Yeah.
And all those movies where he, cut his teeth growing up.
Yeah.
In all those movies, I want to just slap him, Where I gained a lot of respect for him as an actor, as a dramatic actor, wasn't actually even Wolf of Wall Street. I thought it was Moneyball.
Oh, Moneyball. He's exceptional.
I thought he was very good in Moneyball. Yeah. My goodness.
You're right. You're thinking of like the Jump Street 21, 22. But yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, you're right. Moneyball. He was so good.
He played the straight character.
Yeah.
He played it. He played the role, I think, perfectly.
But you know what's funny? You know what is going to disrupt your narrative? Moneyball 2011. 21 Jump Street 2012. 22 Jump Street 2014. Wolf of Wall Street 2013. So he went from that role that we love, and then he took the three that we...
So even in 21 Jump Street, if you remember, he kind of didn't... Channing Tatum was the douchey guy of the two of them, right? And he was more the straight... But he was the straight guy between the two of those guys. He was the bookish nerd between the two of them. I'm not trying to justify my dislike. I'm just saying this is on me. I think he just is so credible as that kind of a jerk.
I agree.
That you can't help but want to slap him silly when you see him on screen.
Yeah, it's too bad though, because I agree. Moneyball is actually that's a movie we should have a review on, because that's such a good movie. I know they can't really do a sequel, but I wish that there were more movies like that. And I know that's a hard thing to do in Hollywood, but that's also the type of movie that when we're just talking about Amazon, talking about Netflix, that's not an expensive movie to make, by the way. There's no CGI. Yeah. You need one, maybe two names, right? I mean, the scenery, the shooting locations. I mean, Moneyball is, come on. Okay, there were some things with professional baseball, but everything else was like inside in offices and stuff like this. They weren't flying to Prague. They weren't blowing up bridges in London. They weren't going to Hong Kong. This is a very, very, makeable movie that Netflix, again.
I think these are very low budget, and I say that relatively speaking, of course, with much better potential, right? Moneyball was an example. I don't know how Draft Day did in terms of box office, but I really like Draft Day with Kevin Costner. And most of these kinds of movies are, most a sports based, like Remember the Titans. I really liked that movie. Where and I mean this again with the greatest of respect. These are low effort movies, right? Or low hanging fruit movies, which is to say, not expensive.
And the story sells it, right?
The story sells it. The Blind Side.
Yes. Amazing movie. So I agree with you. Those types of movies, and they could branch out from sports, although I'm not entirely sure how they could. But there's a Facebook movie. There could be movies about all the other, positive startups, Zappos, for example, and there's.
It could just even be your standard biopic, man. I didn't mind that one with Andrew Garfield where he plays Desmond Dawes.
Oh yeah.
I didn't mind that one at all. It had feelings of. It had the heart of Saving Private Ryan without much of the effort of Saving Private Ryan in there.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of movies like that that I think could be relatively good for Netflix or Amazon or Apple or whoever wants to do them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, look, if I have to choose between watching Moneyball again or watching Don't Look Up again, it's not even a question. Moneyball it is, right?
But what about Red Notice versus Don't Look Up?
Red Notice.
Yeah, I agree.
Because
Red Notice, because there was the thing about a satire is you can't really laugh, but Red Notice. There was a lot of,
There were a couple of moments of actual brevity. Yeah.
Some good singers.
There were some laugh out loud moments. And here, I get that they were trying, but it didn't come off. I can't help but think there are other satires that are done better. And like, if you want to do a deadpan, like, I think the satire would have come off much better if they did it in the vein of either Moneyball, or to go completely off genre, if they had done it along the lines of like Airplane with Leslie Nielsen, which is to say, here's comedy, but let's do deadpan comedy. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that you're trying to make laugh out loud jokes in a movie where you're tackling something so serious as a planet-killing asteroid.
So let's talk about what is upcoming Netflix originals. Do you have any idea?
No, because I think what Netflix does, which is relatively good outside of their TV shows that are successes, is they kind of spring this up onto you out of nowhere.
Can I read a few off to you that I found on IMDb?
Let's do it.
Cobra Kai.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fine.
Yeah. Something called Headspace Guide to Meditation. Don't know what this is. Maybe a documentary. What Happened to Mr. Shah? This is something about maybe a Chinese actor. The Netflix After Party, David Spade. Okay. History of Swear Words.
I saw that, and I thought that was great.
With Nicolas Cage, your man crush.
With Nicolas Cage. But it was so good. It was actually really a good documentary.
Okay.
Docuseries, rather.
Gabby's Dollhouse. Okay, probably more for kids. Surviving Death. Okay, pretty deep. Pieces of a Woman. All right, also seems a little bit dark. Lupin. Don't know what this is. Inspired by the adventures of someone. Pretend It's a City. Okay, this is about Fran Lebowitz. Casting the Queen's Gambit. Okay, Queen's Gambit. Stuck Apart. Night Stalker. The Heartbreak Club. Yeah. But these is Bling Empire.
These sound all like shows, like
Tell me
TV shows, not movies, right? I'm looking at a list of the movies coming out.
Oh, really? What do you got?
On Wikipedia. It's a huge list. It's a massive list. But of the ones that are on there, I'm on just Wikipedia. The one that sounds most interesting to me, because I love the original, Knives Out 2. I really like Knives Out 1. What else is there? Pinocchio? No, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Don't you?
I think of all of them, at least based on text alone, in terms of what I'm seeing, in terms of title, I think Knives Out 2 is the only one that's really got my engine revving to go.
I found the same list, and I agree. Maybe it's because these don't have posters, or they don't have trailers,
and we don't know anything about them.
But I agree, just by name itself, none of these are really
well, it'll make you happy to know that Kevin Hart has 3 movies to be announced with Netflix coming out. So yeah, let's see. There's Netflix is very good about springing these shows onto you at the last possible minute. I do like that. I wasn't expecting anything about this Don't Look Up. I didn't even know about it until I saw a trailer the week before it got released. So I thought that was a nice surprise.
So right now, if someone came to you and said, Pete, what subscription service should I get?
The first question I would ask is, do you have lots of time to watch shows, or just a little bit of time?
I love the question with a question. So smart. So smart. Yes. You should answer the question with a question.
And if you have
a
lot
of time.
Yeah, because if you have a lot of time, go Netflix, because they have such a huge volume of content. It's likely that you're going to find something. I think that most people will already have Amazon Prime Video, because most people don't realize that if you've got Amazon Prime, you automatically get Prime Video, right? So I don't consider that as a part of that, even though it obviously very much is a subscription service. If you don't have a lot of time, I actually, and I can't believe I'm saying it given how much I dislike Apple, I actually think Apple TV is the way to go right now.
I think Apple TV also is a way to go. I have to say, I think Apple TV is not just good value for money, but I think it's good quality. I think that you will.
Yeah, the success rate
Yeah.
I think is much
Yeah.
higher, at least for
Yeah.
me so far, is significantly higher with Apple TV than it is
Yeah.
with any of the other programs. Oh, actually, I'll tell you the other one is probably Disney Plus.
I would say Disney Plus if you really like Marvel. If
you're a Marvel, Star
Yeah.
Wars, or like a cartoon or
Yeah.
animation
Yeah.
fan,
Yeah.
I think that's probably the
Yeah.
safest one to start.
Yeah, I agree. If that's what you've got is a lot of Marvel and Disney, correct? I agree. But you know what's underrated on Amazon, and it's a little bit dated now, is The Boys. You and I love The Boys, remember?
Love it, love it, love it. Can't wait for season 3. I don't know when that's out. I'm very much looking forward to it.
So let's just make a pinky swear right now. When season 3 comes out, we will do
an episode by episode breakdown, 100%.
Episode by episode breakdown.
That's it. Virtual Pinky 5 or Promise, whatever it is.
And you know, we should actually, when it's announced, we should do an episode where we recap what's happened, because I could probably also use a recap in terms of where we are. Yeah.
We can do a season 1 and season 2 quick recap.
Yeah.
It'll also familiarize us with all the characters on there because, like other ensemble shows, it has a significant number of cast members.
It does.
And they all surprisingly play an important role, so it's important to know who each one is.
Very true. I wish I could go back to season 1 and watch it with, like, for the very first time, because that season 1 was just,
oh my God,
every episode was just blowing my mind. I really enjoyed that show so much. Yeah. And it's not because of the action. It's truly a drama, you know?
The action almost takes a back seat.
Yeah, it does.
It's in the sense that, of course, they're great showstoppers, as you would say, for the show, or showpieces for the show. But really, just conceptually, what they've done with that, I think it's also based on a comic or a graphic novel. What I really like is that conceptually, I'm 100% on board with the concept. And I really think that it's accurate in the sense that if Superman were a bad guy and he ran the Justice League like a business, what would it look like? Just look at The Boys. That's exactly what it would look like.
You know, and I have to say, from an Amazon perspective, I like what they've done, because we've seen this too many times where Amazon hasn't followed their own advice, right? They're doing Wheel of Time, trying to do another Game of Thrones, right? Everyone's always chasing after what's popular now, right? And everyone's now kind of chasing after, you know, MCU, right? And everyone needs this universe, this big franchise. And I love how Amazon said, hey, you know what? We don't have any intellectual property. There's no superhero we can get. So you know what? What can we do that still plays into the superhero, not fad, but, you know, attraction, but we're not getting caught up in something that we can never possibly win. And they went very, you know, they kind of did the opposite, right? Contrarian. They went contrarian with it, and I like that idea. And it would be fun if they did that with some other things, you know?
Yeah, I heard from a friend of mine that they've optioned the rights for another graphic novel, and I cannot for the life of me remember the title of that graphic novel, that series. I read the first the first.
Oh, is this the one about like this comic book?
About what?
There is There's an Amazon series. It's extremely graphic, and I can't remember what it is. It's a sci-fi show on Amazon.
Oh, that's already out?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm a little out of touch with Amazon.
Hold on. Utopia.
I know of it, but I don't know it. I haven't watched it.
Oh, watch Utopia. Actually, I stopped watching it because it's pretty dark.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I mean, like, you know, The Boys has a lot of violence.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of, like, heads combusting and blood and stuff. Utopia is very dark. Let me just give you, we have time, right? Let me give you just the synopsis. Because I feel like as a huge comic book fan,
sure,
would like this. So it's a group of, I don't want to say misfit kids, but, you know, kids who are adolescents, And they are passionate about this one very rare comic book series called Utopia.
Okay.
And they believe that this comic book foreshadows this big kind of conspiracy with all these other kind of like bioweapons and the end of the earth and government of the world and the Illuminati and so forth, right? So that they're really 4 or 5 of them super, super passionate about it. They've all got kind of different takes. And somehow they figure out where the creator of this comic lived. And they went to that person's house, and it's super creepy. And once they went to this person's house, then they kind of got on the radar of the government of the world or whoever. And then everyone's chasing them and so on and so forth.
Interesting.
So it's like kind of like a real conspiracy, but it is extremely like, just like The Boys has a lot of like,
bloodshed,
bloody. Yeah, it's very bloody. It's not like the kind of Nancy Drew, rated PG type of
sure
thriller. It's, even though it's about comic book and characters, it gets to be very, very graphic. And for a while, I was kind of like, whoa, this is just stabby.
Oh, okay.
I don't like the stabby, dark, chilling stuff. So.
I'll put it on my list. My list.
Yeah. At least like watch 1 or 2. Let's have a recap. Not a recap, but
I'll touch base on that. Yeah.
All right, so we've got some stuff to do. Next time, we are going to finish season 1 of Wheel of Time.
That's right. We're going to finish it, and we'll give you our thoughts of the season and whether we recommend the series or not, and whether and what we think is going to happen in season 2.
Yep. And then I think we can talk about some other things, which is what we're going to watch next. I know I'm catching up on The Expanse.
On The Expanse?
You're way ahead of me.
Oh,
I'm catching up on The Expanse. There's some new Yellowstone we could watch a little bit as well. So we've got some things in the hopper. And
final episode is next week. So
okay.
Final episode of this season. So that'll be a good place for us to recap
we'll do a season recap.
Season as well. Yeah.
Very good. All right, Pete. As always, pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Ethan.
All right. Peace, everyone.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.